Today you're going to learn how to create a secure password. And you're going to do more than learn how to create one. You're actually going to create your own personalized password that will be unique to every website you visit, easy to remember, and won't be able to be reverse engineered in case one of your passwords gets stolen. Let's get started. In order to do this, you're going to need three things in front of you. You're going to need a die, a pencil, and a pad of paper. So pause this presentation until you get one of each of these things in front of you. Go ahead, pause it. I'll still be here when you get back. Okay, so hopefully you've gotten all these things in front of you. Let's talk about our objectives for the day. In a great book called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath, they talk about how people go about changing. And they say that getting somebody to change involves three things. And they use the ideas of modern brain science to talk about this. Another great book you may want to read is How We Decide by Jonah Lehrer. In that book, Lehrer looks at the latest evidence and shows that we essentially make all our decisions based on our emotions. We make an emotional decision in a split second, and then we rationalize that decision before we even realize we're doing so to justify what that decision is. So what you're going to have to do today is have an emotional response to want to change your password. And the way we're going to get at that is by understanding the risk of weak passwords and the risk of using the same password twice. Motivating your emotions is kind of like getting an elephant to move. It's hard to get going, but once it gets going, it'll keep taking you where you want to get. Once your emotions are motivated, then the writer, your intellect, can start to direct that elephant. And the way we're going to do that is by teaching you how to create that password. So first we're going to motivate you why you need a new password mechanism. Then we're going to teach you how to do it. And finally, we're going to shape the path. We're going to clear all the obstacles out of your way to actually implementing that password. So the first thing is motivating the elephant, getting your emotional attachment to the need to understand why you need to change your password. Now, let's first talk about how passwords get stolen. And there's a number of ways to do this, and I'm just going to highlight them at a very high level. But you should understand that this is extremely prevalent in today's society, and that you, at some point in your life, will likely have your password stolen or compromised, no matter how careful you are. The easiest way to get a password is through phishing, or at least it's the most prevalent in terms of what we see. Here's an example I got from PayPal, supposedly, sending me a notification that I needed to update my account information. If I were to click on that, I would be taken to a site that looked just like PayPal, asking me to log in. Once I logged in, it would give me a notification saying, "Oops, your ID and password didn't work. Try logging in again." And then, behind the scenes, it would take me to the real PayPal site that looked just like the site I had been on. And I would enter my password and ID, and I would continue on, not knowing that the first site I had been to captured all my keystrokes, and now my password's been compromised. This happens with banks quite a bit. The Chase site is excellent for showing you all the different ways that they feel like they're being phished, and they keep it up to date, using things where people use things like pop-ups and other things to make it appear more sophisticated and letting the person feel more secure in entering their information, but they're still being scammed. The next thing, in terms of how to steal a password, is logging your keystrokes. You may get an email from some organization. The one I see all the time now is the Automated Clearinghouse. It says, something didn't go through, click on this report to read what it is. When you click on that report, a Trojan will be loaded onto your machine, and it will start to log all of your keystrokes. Surreptitiously and in the background, it will send its data to some centralized location where all your information will be compromised. This isn't so far-fetched. In fact, it's big crime right now. Here's an example of how it works in the real world. Criminals in Eastern Europe steal passwords through a keystroke logger, and then what they do is they go to your bank and they have all your account information. So they can log in using your ID and password, but being smart, they realize that if they were to extract all your money from the bank and give it to another bank, the bank would become suspicious. So what they do is they pay people in the United States, whom they call mules, to set up another account at the same bank. Then when they transfer all your money from your account to the mule's account, the bank won't put a hold on it. Now the mule can go ahead and distribute the money to the criminals in Eastern Europe and typically take a 10% cut. Another way to steal a password is just to go out and hang in a coffee shop. Now, you need to understand that when you connect wirelessly to a router in a coffee shop, maybe doing your email, you're sending a message to the router and out to the internet. No wires needed. What you may not understand is that that message continues to be transmitted to everybody in the coffee shop. So somebody else sitting right next to you or on the other side of that coffee shop is receiving the same information you send to that router and ultimately the internet. Think you're secure? You're probably not. David Pogue, a great writer from the New York Times technology section, did the following, and I want to just read it verbatim for you. He says, I put a note up on my blog, seeking a guest who could appear on the show and show me the hacky ropes. I found John Bear, a technical consultant, who seemed just right for the part. We met, John, the camera crew and I, in a Manhattan Wi-Fi coffee shop. Turns out there was absolutely nothing to it. John sat a few feet away with his PowerBook. I fired up my Fujitsu laptop and began doing some email and web surfing. That's all it took. He turned his laptop around to reveal all of this. Every copy of every email message I sent and received. A list of the websites I visited, and incredibly, even the graphics that had appeared on the websites I'd visited. None of this took any particular effort, hacker skill, or fancy software. Anyone could do it. You could do it. If you've seen some of my past presentations, I've shown you how to do this, and I've shown it live. All John needed was a packet sniffing program. Such software is free and widely available. He used a Mac program called Eavesdrop. It sniffs the airways and displays whatever data it finds being transmitted in the public hotspot. Your password and ID can be compromised, and at some point in your life, they will be compromised. What's another way to steal a password? Probably the most powerful way, the one used by criminals and governments, is database theft. This is big crime, big business, and big government. Here's some examples. Here's a news article from earlier this year about Chinese hackers being blamed for a database theft of over 35 million users in South Korea. Here's an article about China blocking Google Gmail services and hacking into the Google system itself. Here's one on China being suspected of spying on Renault and stealing car designs from them. So it's big business as well as big crime. And here's an example of big government, where the Israeli government installed a Trojan on the computers of the Iranian nuclear engineers and destroyed their centrifuges because that software was able to control the centrifuges, setting Iran's nuclear program back by 2 years. Database theft, computer crime are prevalent. If your database is stolen, then all they have to do is crack the weakest password in the whole database, and they'll crack the formula for hiding all the passwords. And the holy grail of it all is to crack into a password vault. A password vault is a place where people, well-intentioned people like you and me, store all our passwords, supposedly in a secure way, so we can remember them whenever we go to a new site. But any smart criminal knows if you can hack into a password vault, then you can hack into all the passwords of all the people using that vault and be able to get to all their accounts unbeknownst. Here's somebody I was talking to who uses a password vault. It may be that your password vault itself doesn't get hacked, but your individual account does. This person says the stupidest thing I did was that I was using strong passwords for all my accounts, except for the vault password, which was a 4-digit password. Well, whatever someone might have stolen is now invalid, and that's because they changed their passwords using this mechanism. And here's the 5th way to steal a password: brute force, the old-fashioned way. Just trying to hack into a password by trial and error. There's a couple sites out there that I want to call your attention to. My favorite is How Secure Is My Password? The second one is by Gibson Research called Haystack. Let's look at How Secure Is My Password. What it does is I'm going to type in the word CAT here, C-A-T. It tells me how long it would take to crack that password. It tells me some of the risks of that password, and it lets me know a couple ideas about what I can change. Now, if I change that to catgut, it would take maybe a second, but it still knows that it's a password. If I change it to catgut1, now it's about 5 minutes, and if I put a capital W after it, it'll take about 10 days. This is a great site which we'll come back to show some examples. So now that we know that passwords can be stolen, and how they can be stolen, and now that we understand the prevalence with which they are stolen, let's understand what people do with them once they are stolen. The first one, as we showed in that example of the criminals from Eastern Europe, is that they can hack into all your accounts that use your same ID and password and steal your money. That's bad. But even worse, you could lose all your friends in another scam. In this scam, people hack into your email account, and then they send notes to all your friends with a plea, something like, "Hey, I've been mugged in London. I know I didn't tell you that I was there, but while I was there I got mugged and I don't have money to pay my hotel or get a plane ticket back. They stole everything I have. Can you wire me some money? Here's a phone number to do it." And here's an example I give you below of a friend of mine that I got just a little while ago, and it's a legitimate looking email. She travels quite a bit. I wouldn't be surprised that she was in Madrid, Spain, and now all she needs is 1850 euros, and she'll be fine if I can just get that to her. Again, a scam. The next thing you can do is you can share it with others. There are millions of IDs and passwords in the hacker community, and they sell them to each other. Many of these are widely available, so I took the privilege of going out and getting one of those lists and showing it to you here. What I've done is you can see the number of the IDs that were in this list, but I'm just showing you some of the lines in it. And here's some of the passwords people use. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the most prevalent password in all of computerdom. Here's some other ones. Password. This guy here that I highlighted is a little smarter because he capitalized the P. And how about this person putting a 1 afterwards? That's going to take a long time to hack. But here's the challenging thing. Look at this password here from Virginia Arola on Hotmail. It is a very strong looking password. Let me go ahead and copy that, and I'm going to paste it in to how secure is my password to just see how just long it would take to crack that password. About 32 billion years. That's a long time. So I'm sure this person thinks that they're secure using a password like this. The only thing they didn't count on was their account being hacked and their password being shown to millions of people like you. Now, anywhere they use that ID, also use that password, they can now be compromised. The other thing you can do with a stolen password is steal an identity. About 3.5% of the total U.S. population learned they were victims of identity fraud in 2010. That's a lot of people. When the number gets that high, there's a likelihood that the next person's identity to be stolen could be yours, so you better start protecting it. Hopefully what we've done now is motivated your emotions to feel the worry of what could happen if your password gets stolen. And now we're going to inform your intellect of how to direct your emotions to get rid of that worry. We're going to teach you how to create a secure password. Now, the steps to creating a secure password system might be a little daunting, but we're going to step through it, and you're going to end up this presentation with a password that is easy to remember, cannot be easily reverse engineered, is strong, and is site specific. Now, before you go ahead and create such a password, you also need to understand that there are some real-world limitations on how to create that password that sites put on you that might limit how strong you make your password. So the steps we're going to go through are creating a password core. We're going to customize that core then for each site you use. And then for sites whose passwords expire, I'm going to show you how to use an alphabetic counter so that it's easy to remember those passwords as well. So let's understand the real-world password. It's amazing how sites work against you to thwart your efforts to create a secure password. Some sites don't accept repeating characters, so if you have the letter A followed by another A in your password, it'll reject it. Some sites don't accept passwords longer than 8 or 10 characters. Oftentimes these are banks whose password systems are on mainframe computers and are hard to change, and so they have an 8 or 10 character limitation that again thwarts your ability to create a strong password. And then some sites don't even accept special characters. Special characters are those things that are above the numbers or off to the right side of your keyboard, like the semicolon, the quote sign, and things like that. So when I went out and changed my passwords, I found that there was a least common denominator, that a password had to be 8 characters long. It could include uppercase and lowercase characters and numbers, but because some sites don't accept special characters, I couldn't create a common password on all my sites that had special characters in it. So, how good is good enough when you understand these real-world limitations? Well, the experts out there recommend that everybody have an 8-character password that consists of an uppercase and lowercase character, a number, and a special character. And I've divided it into 2 spots because people typically think of special characters as these characters above the numbers, but there are also special characters on the side of the keyboard, and those are more rarely used, and actually using them makes your password even more secure. Now, if we go out to how secure is my password and enter in a password like this, it would take 333 days to crack. Let me just show you. So, if I type the number 1, a lowercase a, an uppercase A, an exclamation mark for our special characters 1, and a tilde sign for special character 2. That's 5 characters long. If I give it 3 more characters, you'll see that it takes about 333 days to crack that password. So that's a good baseline. Let's make sure that the password we use would take at least 333 days to crack. The goal here is not to create the world's most secure password. Kind of like the joke with the people running away from the bear, you don't have to run faster than the bear. You just have to run faster than the person next to you, because the bear is going to catch them before it catches you. Or another analogy is that imagine a criminal walking down the street checking all the cars in this block to see if they're unlocked. They'll pass by the ones that are locked, but once a car door opens up, that's the car they're going to rob. So let's figure out how to create a password that is stronger than the average password. Now, a password that was without special characters that was 8 characters long would take 10 days to crack. Add 1 more character, and it'll take a year to crack. Make it 10 characters long, and it'll take 106 years to crack. So a password of 9 or 10 characters long seems to be a good objective. It's stronger than the recommended password, and being 9 or 10 characters long, it'll work on most sites, and whenever we do have to live with a site that only accepts 8 characters, we can just jettison a character or 2. Now, let me give you one more piece of information about how the real world doesn't require passwords that are incredibly lengthy and complex. And that's what the experts would tell you to create. Passwords aren't cracked a letter at a time like in the movies. So it's not as if you look at this hangman game and suddenly the letter A appears, and then you figure out, well, what are all the words with the letter A? I'm making progress. Passwords just basically tell you whether you got it or not. So I have in front of you a 3-character mystery word, and I want you to crack it. So what's that I hear you say? Is it the word cat? Nope, it's not cat. Is it the word bat? Nope, not bat. Is it the word sat? Nope, not sat. Sorry, your account has been disabled after 3 unsuccessful tries. My password was hat. So even with a short password, it's very hard to guess what it is if you don't use a word or a common password. So let's go ahead and create it, just making sure that we have a different password for every site, because sites will get hacked, but your password schema won't. We're going to go through the different steps of creating a password core. There are 3 in this situation. The first is that I want you to pick a 5 or 6 word long phrase that has meaning in your life. This might be a life verse, like love is patient, love is kind. Maybe an inspirational quote like, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and by golly, people like you. Maybe it's a musical verse like, and she's buying a stairway to heaven. Or the title of your favorite book, movie, or song. I'm going to use an example in this section of the book called A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. What I want you to do now is to pause this presentation and write down a 5 or 6 word long phrase that has meaning in your life. Go ahead, pause this presentation. I'll still be here. Did you pause it? And did you write down a phrase in your life that has meaning? If you haven't done it, hit pause again. Get that pencil or pen and that pad of paper and write it down. Okay, the rest of this won't make much sense to you or be very helpful for you if you haven't created this password core phrase. So if you've done it, let's keep going. If you haven't, this is your last chance to do it. All right, now that you've created that phrase, we're going to convert it into an acronym. So every time you type in the acronym, you're thinking of your phrase. The acronym should be 5 or 6 letters long. So if you've got a long phrase, one that's more than 6 words long, you may have to shorten it down to 6 letters. If you've got a short phrase, one that's lower than 5 characters in length, you may have to lengthen it. But in this example, I want you to take that phrase you wrote down and create an acronym for it with just the first letters of each word. So in my example of A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, it becomes AHGTTU. Go ahead and write down on the pad of paper your acronym. Pause this presentation if you need time. Now the last thing we want to do with this password core is we want to strengthen the acronym by ensuring it contains the following 3 criteria: an uppercase character, a lowercase character, and a number. Now, those of you who have heard the experts out there are going to say, what about special characters? Sure, a special character would make it stronger, but you're going to run into sites that don't accept special characters, and so the way we're going to thwart having a special character is just by lengthening our password to be more than 8 characters in length. Now, if you're confused on how to strengthen your acronym, why don't you use this conversion table, where the letter A gets converted to the number 4, because you know a 4 kind of looks like a capital A, or a B gets converted to an 8 because it kind of looks like an 8, an E to a 3, etc., etc. With this conversion table, hopefully your acronym will look a little bit more difficult. Make sure you include an uppercase and a lowercase character in there. So take time to do it. In my example, A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, or the AHGTTU, becomes 4 for H for hitchhikers, 9 for guide because it looks like a lowercase g, 2 for the word to, T for the word the, and a capital U for universe because universe is a big thing. Go ahead and create your acronym. Pause this presentation if you need to. All right, now that we've created our core password, we're going to learn how to customize it for each site. It may seem like we're going through a lot of steps, but by the end of this, you'll find that you can understand and feel safe with the password approach we have. Next section is going to be the most confusing aspect of the approach, but it's the most valuable. It's the secret sauce behind it all. It's going to use the name of the site to create 4 unique characters that you're going to add to your core at every site. And I'll explain how this happens, but just imagine that your core is 6 characters long and that we add 4 characters to it, so now it's 10 characters long. As long as that includes uppercase, lowercase, and a number, it's going to take about 106 years to crack that password. Not very likely it'll get cracked. So we're going to make it 10 characters long by padding it with 4 unique characters on each site. And since the letters from the name of the site would allow the password to be easily reverse engineered, we're going to use a keyboard transposition mechanism to get those letters. Hang in there. While this is confusing, once you get it, you'll be able to execute this without having to do a whole lot of work. So here's how it works. You're going to select 4 what I'll call padding characters from the name of the site, the document, or the application that requires a password. And here's the letters I want you to use. You're going to use the first letter of the site, the second letter of the site, the penultimate or second to last letter of the site, and the last letter. Here's an example. If I were going out to gmail.com, the name of that site, what's called its domain name, is Gmail. Its first letter is G, second letter is M, penultimate letter is the I, the second to last letter, and of course the last letter is L. So hopefully this makes sense. The first, second, penultimate, and last letters are the ones you're going to use to pad the core password you've already created. Now the second part of this is the secret sauce, and the part where many people get confused. Hang in there, it shouldn't be that difficult. What you're basically going to do is select a keyboard transposition, where you're going to take the character, like the G from Gmail, and you're going to create something different than a G, so that it can't be easily reverse engineered. And so the way to do it is by looking at the keyboard. You'll either choose the key above, the key below, the key to the left or the right of that padding letter. Now, if you happen to be at the end of a row or column, you could wrap right around. So that's an option I'll show you in just a second. Another set of things you might want to do is choose the number above the letter you're talking about, either going up towards the left or up towards the right. Sounds confusing, I understand. So here's where the die is going to be your friend. Take the die if you're not good at making decisions, and I want you to roll it. Just roll it once, and I want you to look at the number on the die and associate it with this keyboard map in front of you. So again, using the example of the G from Gmail, if your die roll was a 1, you're going to be used from now on as your transposition mechanism, the key above the G, or the key above whatever character you need to pad. If you got a 2, it's below, a 3, the key to the left, a 4, a key to the right, a 5, the number above and to the left of the character, and a 6, the number above and to the right of the character. Now, for those of you who use other devices than computers, like an iPad or an iPhone or an Android device, they do not show numbers on their keypad. So if you got a 5 or a 6 and you spend a lot of your time doing password entry on a smart device, well, go ahead and roll again until you get a 1, 2, 3, or 4. As I said, this is the most confusing part of the presentation. So let me give an example. Imagine that I had rolled a 4, so that I should be using the key to the right of every character in my pad. Well, remember that the G in Gmail, I'm going to use the key to the right of it. That becomes an H. The M in Gmail, there's no character to the right of the M, or no letter to the right of the M, so I wrap around the keyboard to the Z. The key to the right of I is O, and the key to the right of L is, whoops, no letter there. I've got to wrap around to the other side of the keyboard, an A. So now I have a padding mechanism, HZOA, which stand for the G, M, I, and L of the site Gmail. Again, it might be confusing, but stick with me a little bit longer to see how this can be used for all sites. The great thing about it is all you have to remember is your transposition mechanism, not the characters of the site. The HZOA will come naturally when you come to Gmail and use the first, second, penultimate, and last characters of the site. Now we're going to put it all together, and here you need your die again. You're going to come up with a pattern to pad your core acronym. So roll your die again, and look at the number that came up on it. Now, for this example, I'm just going to assume that I rolled a 1, which means that I'm going to put the 4 padding characters after my core. Remember, the padding characters use that keyboard transposition and the name of the site. So imagine that this red section here, the 4H9TU, is A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. It's easy for me to remember that phrase, and it's going to be easy for me to remember the strong password core. Now when I go to Gmail, it's going to be easy for me to transpose G, M, I, and L to H, Z, O, and A, which become my padding mechanism. And since the approach I'm going to use is to always put the padding characters after my core, my password for my Gmail account is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, and the transposed characters for G, M, I, and L. So depending on what you rolled on the dice, here's examples of how that would look for your transposition pattern. Okay, now that you've written those down, let's recount what we've got here. There are only 3 things you need to remember to have a strong password that's easy to remember, can't be reverse engineered, and is unique to every site. The first one is your core acronym, which hopefully you've got on the pad of paper with you. The next one is your keyboard transposition pattern. Above, below, left, right, the number to the left or the number to the right. And the next is your padding pattern. So, and go ahead and write these things down. Now, this may seem overwhelming for you at this point, but you can do it. Here's a testimony from somebody I worked with who says, "The evening of your presentation, I went home and created strong and unique passwords for all my banking and credit card accounts. The proof of how easy it is to remember these is that when I went in to check them all this weekend, something I do every weekend, I didn't have to refer to a cheat sheet." You can do this, and we're going to practice it now. So what I want you to do is practice writing down a password for the following, using your core password and your padding mechanism. I want you to identify what your password would look like for a website named gmail.com. So go ahead and write down what that password would be. Now you may be wondering, why did I choose this pattern of the first character, the second character, the penultimate character, and the last character? Where did that come from? There are some websites that are short. For example, there's a website called me.com that Apple runs. Well, it doesn't have 4 characters in it. But if you use the first character, an M, the second character, an E, the penultimate character, the second to last character, which happens to be M again, and the last character, which is an E, this approach will still work. So go ahead and write down your password for the website called me.com. Hopefully, as you write it down, it's starting to make sense how this all comes together. Let's do this. Think about an application named Quicken that might require a password, an application you have on your computer. You're going to use the Q, the U, the E, and the N of Quicken to create your password. And if you have documents that you want to secure, you're going to use the name of the document to secure it, using the same pattern. So if you have a document named Letter of Instruction, which everyone should have, so that in the event that you ever met your untimely end, somebody could pick up all your accounts and manage your effects for posterity, and you should print it out and put it in a safe. But the electronic version of it should be secured, because it's going to contain your IDs and passwords, and you're not going to want anybody to break into that. So if you call that thing Letter of Instruction, you're going to use the L and E of letter and the O and N of instruction for your password. Hopefully, as you practice this, it makes sense. Now, there are sites out there that expire, typically the ones you use at work. Well, here's an approach to handling those in a way that can be easy to remember as well. You're going to take your core password again, and you're going to put an alphabetic counter somewhere in the middle of it. Now, before we use the alphabetic counter, what I want you to use for the 4-character pad is the name of your company's URL. So, A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, if I worked at gmail.com, would be A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, my padding mechanism, and then I'm going to insert somewhere in there, maybe right between my core password and my padding mechanism, the letter A. Every time my password expires, I'm going to increment that counter so that that A then becomes the letter B. And then after that, it'll become the letter C, etc. I know of no sites which maintain more than 25 old passwords, so this is a schema that will work and can be repeated once you get to Z. You'll just start with A again. Now, this is all challenging, and I understand. So now we're going to shape the path. Now that your emotions are aligned with the risk of your password being stolen, your intellect understands how to create unique passwords that are easy to remember and cannot be reverse engineered and are strong. Now we're going to shape the path for you actually being able to do that. And that's what's called implementation. And you may understand and have the desire to do all of the things we talked about today, but if you don't do it, you've gotten nowhere. So what we're going to do is start with your email account. And I want you to configure it so that you'll need to enter in your password every time you access it. So uncheck that box that says remember my password next time I visit it. And I want you to change your password on your email account. This is your personal email account. So now every time you go into that, which is probably several times a day, you'll have to type in your password. The reason I don't want you to remember the password is just because I want you to get in the pattern of typing this in, getting what's called muscle memory on your fingers as you type so that you know how to do that transposition mechanism. Now, after a week of doing this, you can check the remember my password again if you want to. And then I want you to move to your work account, one that you'll need to enter in again every time you use it. This should again start to develop the pattern of, oh, I enter it in one way on my personal mail, I enter it a different way at work. Once you get the gist of that, now I want you to schedule 4 hours on some weekend. Now it took me less than 2 hours to do this, but to go to every site you have and to change the password. You may want to store this mechanism in a protected document and print it out and store it in a safe in your house, but I don't want you carrying it around with you. And then I'll also show you, just to get going, how to set up reminders at a place called Please Notify Me. Now, when you want to think of all the different accounts you have, there's a lot of them out there. There are non-web applications, as I mentioned, like Quicken or TurboTax, or maybe applications you use at work that have a unique password above and beyond the password for work. There are documents like an account summary or a letter of instruction. We all have email accounts. There are many different types of financial accounts like banks or pension accounts or retirement accounts or PayPal or credit cards. There's health coverage accounts like Blue Cross Blue Shield or a medical savings account. Your insurance company probably has your ID and password. You may have online content like file sharing, or maybe magazines or newspapers you subscribe to. Maybe a site like Amazon or Apple iTunes or eBay or Groupon all have accounts and passwords you need to remember. There are social sites, travel sites, and utilities. Spend a couple hours on that weekend and go through all these sites that you use. To help you do this, there's a site called Please Notify Me. And what you can do is you can go out there today and type in your email and put a description in, like, it's been a week since you created your personal mail password, now create your work password, and then set it up so that it'll remind you a week from now. Once you do that, it will send you a reminder a week from now, letting you know that you should move to the next step. At that point, go back out to Please Notify Me, change the description of a task about it's been a week since you changed your work account, now schedule 2 to 4 hours on a weekend and change all your accounts. This will continue to nag you until you get the whole thing done. The title of this presentation was called What? Me Worry? Well, now you can confidently answer, not anymore. Good luck.